actually the Facebook zine. We're going to meet for coffee. But this zine, she talks a lot about race and class and stuff that a lot of people in rifle were not discussing, which was really frustrating, and part of the reason why it wasn't being discussed is because we were having these endless, ridiculous conversations about the media. And I guess that's one thing I always like to tell people when I give talks like this is that having difficult discussions is difficult. That's why they call it a difficult discussion. But if you don't do it, things just wither away and die and become stale and awful. And I don't know. I guess that's the next slide I want to show. But if you guys are interested in her work, she's type in Bamboo Girl because there's some of it on the web. I do not have any pictures of confessional zines. Does anybody know what a confessional zine is? Okay, kind of. Yeah, totally. So, because people are having a hard time having honest conversations about stuff besides gender, what I saw happen a lot amongst people who kind of considered themselves radicals were these really weird zines started coming out that we termed confessional zines. And they're kind of like diaries, but they're really, really creepy. A lot of them dealt with were white middle class women dealing with trying to deal with race and with their privilege, but they were very much like putting the honest responsibility of their racism on any person of color who could possibly be in their midst. Like it was like this thing of like, I'm this really bad person, please forgive me. And then a list of every bad thing that they've done. And the whole idea was supposed to be, we're opening up the conversation. But it actually was totally shutting the conversation down before it began. And it was really a hard thing to critique, especially in my 20s. It was a really difficult, it was really difficult when somebody's coming into a conversation saying, I'm opening up the dialogue. Watch me open up the dialogue. And then every time you try to say something, nope. And that's what these zines felt like. And I always want to mention them because they're kind of like the hidden Rayaflo legacy. And I do have a couple of them, but I literally like wrapped them in plastic bags and like hid them somewhere and can't find them because they're like so super creepy. This is the next zine that I did called My Life with Evan Dando. I was on the road with my band in England, and I actually wasn't that involved with Rifle anymore because I was on tour all the time and I didn't go to meetings. And it was really frustrating because everybody thought I was this big-time feminist punk rocker and I didn't take any shit. But in my real life, you know, I was dealing with club promoters who were calling me a feminazi and guys spitting beers in my face and a lot of violence at our shows. And I started thinking on tour, like, is Evan Dando doing the same thing I'm doing? And I have a feeling he wasn't. You know what I mean? I was like, he's probably got some like hot girl in his like Hyatt hotel room, and I'm sleeping next to a cat litter box. And so I started sort of doing this compare and contrasting, and also thinking about what it means to be somebody who comes out very early in their career and says, I give a shit, and my work is political, and I'm not going to lie and say it's not political. Because once you do that, everyone wants to come out and tell you that you're a big hypocrite, tell you you're not the right kind of feminist, or you're too feminist and man-hating, or you're not man-hating enough, or you're whatever. And while a lot of the critiques are productive and totally valid, a lot of them are just disguised Andy Murray-esque crap. And so I went back to making a real personal little pocket-sized zine that kind of dealt with what it felt like to be a woman on the road and thinking about Evan Dando. And the next zine I made is called April Fool's Day, and I made this I think in 94 or 95. Several of my friends died from heroin-related accidents. Heroin sucks. And it was incredibly frustrating for me, and a really close friend of mine in Olympia, Washington, was on his way to dying. I mean, when somebody's feeling like the tip jar money from a coffee shop, it's bad. And it was really frustrating because I wanted to do something about it, and I wanted to make my friends who had died, I wanted to make their lives mean something to me, or like I wanted something positive to come out of it, if that's even possible. And so I actually quit drinking for 6 years, starting on April Fool's Day. And I made this zine, and I talked about addiction and kind of the connections between addiction and oppression that I was seeing in my own life, my friends' lives, and I was reading about. And I did like an interview with a bass player in a band who had been sober for a year and a half, and was really just trying to put that out into the world, that it was possible to have a good time without partying, which I didn't even know was possible. If anybody here knows about K Records, it was a record label in Olympia, and it's really associated with this kind of like childlike music, and a lot of people who hung out in that scene didn't drink, and like we'd all be like having these rowdy punk rock parties, and they're like, want to come to my vegan barbecue? And we were always like, I'd rather die than go to your vegan barbecue. Sounds like church camp. But then I got sober, and I went to one of their barbecues, and it was so fun. So yeah, that was actually my very last zine that I ever did, was April Fool's Day, and it was a really, really long time ago. But I did maintain a zine aesthetic in my future work. After Bikini Kill ended, I moved to New York, partially to get away from all the heroin. It was in Olympia at the time. And I started a new band called Tigre. And this was right when the internet was kind of like, becoming a real thing. And we were really trying to negotiate in that band, like, how did we kind of maintain our DIY ethics and even our aesthetic? Because to me, there's also an aesthetic to do with DIY that's very political, and it's that you can see taste-up marks on things. You can see that a human being actually made this. It wasn't 10 guys in a graphics lab trying to figure out how to make it look like a paste-up shadow. It was like actually someone who's freaked out, who wants to get their message across, or their ideas across, or their art across, and is making this thing and then giving it to you. And in our band, we were making electronic music, and we tried to be kind of the audio equivalent of a zine. Johanna Fateman, who was my collaborator throughout the project, I met her, again, huge zine moment for me, because she gave me her zine, Snarla, at a Bikini Kill show, and she made that zine with Miranda July, who's now, like, she makes movies and all that stuff. And she handed me the zine, and I've gotten so many kind of, not to be a jerk, but like boring Riot Girl zines that were all the same. It was like Hello Kitty, Wonder Woman picture, glitter. And while they might have really meant something to somebody who was like 18 and just starting out, like to me, I'd already kind of done that. And Snarla, they were writing stuff like from the point of view of anger, like a girl talking to her own anger. I mean, it was just really like interesting, weird writing, and I saw it, and the same thing happened with Toby, happened with Joe, that I was like, this is my best friend, I have to find this person, and I found her, and I